again, a lot of design work has already taken place. It has created 1,200 jobs, but I appreciate that's not going to win you round to try by telling you it, but it has. The initial preparatory work prior to the final decision being taken has started.
Are they on 0 hours?
Yeah. Well, 2.3% of the population are, so I doubt it. But
you will have to make choices, won't you? Where you going to spend that money?
Yeah, I mean, let's be absolutely fair. You have to make choices when it comes to expenditure or anything.
Yeah.
But we are starting.
What are your choices?
Well, absolutely. But we are starting from a strong position. I mean, this is a government that has overseen job creation of more than 1,000 people every day since the general election. The 4 years prior to that, we were losing 25 a day. We have the fastest growing economy in the G7. So yes, we have, and what is more, we have the poorest people in our society paying less and the richest people paying more than they ever have done before. So we've got a strong economy. Does that make it easy to spend £100 million? No, it doesn't. Does that make it easy? Sorry, 100 million, it's not 100 million, is it? But, no, it is, yes, sorry, slip of the tongue. No, of course it doesn't. But no spending decision is ever easy.
No, but
I'm a multi-millionaire.
Okay, other members on the panel want to answer it?
It's depressing to hear Nick go into auto mode and sound like a speaking clock with the Tory.
Do you think it's a bad thing that we've created?
No, it is. This is a meeting of candidates who can represent Newport. And the last thing I think we want to see representing Newport is someone who will join a group in Parliament on these issues we call the Give War a Chance party. And they're mostly Tories. We've got some Lib Dems, we've got some others, but all that Nick has said tonight, he'd be a recruit for them, doing exactly what he's told to do, and I'm afraid leading us to more waste, more futility, more lost lives in future, and a more divided world. So don't vote for him. He's not a good thing.
I wouldn't expect I wouldn't expect your endorsement, Paul. And I'm not going to pretend for a second that I'm going to talk you around in terms of your worldview. What I would say is when you saw the passion on Michael Gove's face at that Syria vote, that wasn't because he wanted to give war a chance. It's because he wanted to save lives. And you might you might disagree with whether he was right or not. But the passion was there to save lives in Syria from people whose president was dropping barrel bombs of chemical weapons on them. I think that deserves an acknowledgement and some respect, rather than being simply thrown away as a warmonger.
It was a key day. We had a submarine ready to fire missiles into Syria the 29th of August 2 years ago. It was a very significant day in Parliament because it's the first time since the 18th century that a Prime Minister would come to Parliament saying, go to war, and Parliament said, no, we're not. And it was a great triumph, because what Cameron was asking us to do, and Michael Gove was asking us to do, with passion or without passion, was to go into the division between the Sunnis and the Shias, tribal wars that have been going on for centuries, very deep, bitter, divided, of which we know nothing. And he wanted us to intervene in there to fight Assad, who was the deadly enemy of ISIS. And now we're fighting ISIS, who's the deadly enemy of Assad. This idea that we're masters of the universe and we can go with our weapons
and
might and intervene. But the Parliament, in its great good sense, the reason we got into so many wars is the hubris of prime ministers. What happens when the war drums start beating, and they've all done it, Blair, Thatcher and Cameron, is they're different people. They're not entirely sane. They talk in a different way. They roll up the old Churchillian rhetoric. They walk in a different way. They strut like Napoleon. Suddenly they're on the world stage. It's their time not to deal with these boring things about bedroom tax and all the details of policy. They're now going to write their page in history, and it's their bloody page in history. Absolutely. And Parliament stopped Cameron. We should have stopped Blair too. We should have stopped John Reid.
This is not about Cameron. This is not about Napoleon. This is about the Syrian people who had nowhere left to turn. Their own government turned on them and attacked them. We, as the West as a whole, irrespective of the fact that Obama had a red line when it came to chemical weapons, which was completely ignored, they had nowhere to turn. So they turn in to extremists, because the only help they get was from Jabhat al-Nusra. It was from IS, or what became IS. So that actually, non-intervention has consequences. Intervention has consequences. But let's not pretend that one's a perfect solution and one's not. I think it is ethically wrong if we do not help those who are in need, whose life is in danger, who are persecuted, who have nowhere else to turn. The rich world has a responsibility to those people.
65 years from the Palestinians.
Right, Pippa,
Okay,
Palestine as well.
Answer that one.
Yeah, well, why are we at Palestine?
I was in Syria for 3 weeks actually, on my way to Gaza, and it was 4 years ago now. And Syria was such a beautiful, peaceful place. People were so well educated, cafe society, it was secular.
Yeah.
It was a really nice place to be, and I didn't understand why it wasn't on our map. Assad was quite liked. I'm not saying I like him, but he brought a lot of stability and also prosperity. People were very well off. There weren't many poor people in Syria. It's a really beautiful place, as a matter of fact. And of course, most of it's gone. The old souks of Aleppo have all been burnt to the ground. It's a huge, it's a catastrophic cultural disaster. But on the other hand, I also know that Assad was not great. He was a dictator. But the real point that I want to make is that by noises made by the British government, we gave the opposition the idea that we would support them. And those noises emboldened them to rise up. Unfortunately, having emboldened them, British Parliament said no. We're not. We've just seen what we did to Libya. We tore it apart. We've seen what we did to Iraq. We're no good to these countries, no matter what they think. And so we didn't go and help them. And thus a vacuum was formed, and, well, the rest is on our television screens. It's just bloodshed and hardship for the Syrian people. So British foreign policy had caused this to happen. Not just British, probably United States as well. And there were United States funded propaganda television programs and channels on Syrian TV. I watched them myself. So there's a lot going on in the world, which isn't just about fighting. But another point I do want to make is, you know, peace and the avoidance of war is the tough road. It's quite easy to go to war and start shooting people and messing things up, burning and blowing up, etc. Peace is a really tough road. It's no hippie option. To work for peace, to strive for peace and to achieve it and to maintain it is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it. So why aren't we spending all this money to achieve peace, to build bridges between nations and between cultures within nations? Why do we always think the first thing to do is some Stone Age man idea of lobbing rocks at each other when we're not happy? Let's get around the table, because no matter which war we care to think about it, the matter was finally settled round a table. So let's get to the table sooner, and let's prepare different ground. Instead of encouraging people to rise up against each other, which we of course did in Iraq to some extent as well, let us prepare different ground. Let's prepare ground when people can develop a common dialogue and can work for it. It's a long shot and it'll take hundreds of years. It's a really hard path to take, but I advocate it, and so do Greens.
I think it'd be not a bad idea to finish now.
Cool.
And then, if we've got to get out here at 9, it gives you a chance for a little chat with each other. You know, that's okay with you. John Million's got a bucket.
You really
And we,
hopeful.